Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining today's webinar. My name is Anna, and I'm a project associate at Clean Energy States Alliance. The topic for today's webinar is State of the U.S. Energy Storage Industry 2022 Year in Review. Happy New Year, everyone. This webinar is a presentation of DOE OE Energy Storage Technology Advancement Partnership. STAP is a collaboration between the U.S. Department of Energy, Office of Electricity, Sandia National Labs, and Clean Energy States Alliance. Before we go any further, let's review some quick webinar logistics. You'll notice that you have a webinar console, which should look like the picture that's shown on the screen here on the left. You can use the console to adjust your audio. Either you can listen from your computer speakers or you can call in via telephone. All of our attendees are in listen-only mode. Near the bottom of the console, you see there's a box where you can write and submit your questions to us. We will hope to reserve about 15 minutes at the end of today's webinar for Q&A. Please submit your questions as soon as you think of them. You do not have to wait until the Q&A session begins. We'll get to as many questions as we can. If you would like to view the speaker's presentation slides in full screen, you have the option to minimize the webinar console. You just need to click on the orange arrow, which you'll see is circled on our sample webinar console. Click that arrow again to expand the webinar console. One final note, today's webinar is being recorded. We will send you an email with a copy of today's webinar slides as well as the recording within a couple days. We will also post all of this material to our website, cisa.org/webinars. That link is available on the screen at the bottom there as well. That is a good URL to keep track of because that is also where we post all of our upcoming webinars. With that, I will pass it over to today's webinar moderator, my colleague Todd Olinsky-Paul, who is a Senior Project Director at Cisa. Off to you, Todd.
Thanks, Anna. Well, welcome everybody to the very first STAP webinar of 2023. And as we have established a tradition that we do an annual look back at the preceding year in energy storage, and as part of this, we will also look at trends that point to the near future for energy storage. So this is typically quite a well-attended webinar. I see we already have over 200 attendees and people are still logging in. So just a reminder, we will attempt to answer as many questions as we can at the end of the presentation. Please type those questions in as they occur to you. Don't wait until the very end to do that. And that gives us a chance to sort through the questions and try to organize them a little bit and combine similar ones and so forth. So I will start with a brief introduction to Cisa and the STAP program, and then I'll introduce our speakers and we'll be off. The Clean Energy States Alliance, if you're new and have never attended one of our webinars before, we're a nonprofit. We're located in Vermont. We work with our state members, and the members are represented here on this slide by their logos. Essentially, Cisa is a membership organization for state energy agencies. You can see we work with states all over the country on clean energy programs and policy. If you could advance the slide, please. Among other things, we conduct a program called STAP. This is an STAP webinar, and STAP stands for Energy Storage Technology Advancement Partnership. We do this under contract to Sandia National Laboratories. The funding is from U.S. DOE Office of Electricity. Dr. Imre Gyuk, who is here to make introductory remarks, leads that effort at DOE OE, and we're very grateful for his continued support. And among the things that we do through STAP, aside from webinars like this one, we help to put together partnerships between state energy agencies, the Sandia National Laboratories, US DOE, and other partners. And that often includes utilities, sometimes includes municipalities, universities, and so forth, and industry. And these partnerships are for the purpose of developing and jointly supporting energy storage demonstration projects. And you could see on the map there are some call outs of projects and other work that we've done around the country through this effort. In addition to deployment of demonstration projects, we also support state energy storage policy and program development. And so we work with Sandia to put on energy storage workshops for state agencies. We do presentations. We work with them on helping to develop programs around energy storage support and incentives. And we also write reports and provide information that's helpful to states on topics such as cost-benefit analysis, best practices, and so forth. Next slide, please. So having introduced Cisa and STAB and having thanked Dr. Gyuk, and I also want to thank Dan Borneo, who can't be here today as he's on vacation, but he runs the energy storage effort at Sandia. Next slide, please. And I'll go ahead and introduce our speakers. So Dr. Gyuk is going to make introductory remarks. He is the Director of Energy Storage Research at US DOE Office of Electricity. He holds a BS from Fordham and a PhD from Purdue Universities. He's taught at the University of Wisconsin and at Kuwait University. And for the past 2 decades, he's directed innovative research at the forefront of energy storage. His team develops a wide portfolio of storage technologies for a broad spectrum of applications. Currently, he is partnering with states, municipalities, tribes, and utilities on numerous projects for grid resilience and decarbonization. Dr. Gyuk's program includes research on materials, devices, and systems. It also funds work on analytics, policy, finance, and most recently, social equity and long-duration energy storage. His work has led to 13 R&D 100 awards, 2 EPA Green Chemistry Challenge Awards, and Lifetime Achievement Awards from ESA and NatBat. He is internationally recognized as a leader in the energy storage field. Following his introductory remarks, we will have our featured presentation that is by John Fernandes, a senior consultant for emerging technologies at Customized Energy Solutions. John joined CES after nearly 5 years in the development, construction, and IPP sectors, managing policy and creating new market opportunities across renewable, fossil, transmission, and energy storage business lines. Prior to his time in the commercial space, John was on staff at the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission and a regulatory manager for an investor-owned utility. He has operated in every U.S. wholesale energy market and has offered expertise in international markets as well, including Canada, the UK, Mexico, Australia, Africa, and Southeast Asia. He holds an MBA from the University of Delaware, a master's in public health from Johns Hopkins University, and as a guest lecturer for the University of Colorado at Denver Global Energy Management Program. And we know from prior experience that he has a wealth of information to share on the energy storage environment here in this country, including the industry, including deployments, trends, policy, and markets. So without further ado, I will pass the microphone to Dr. Gyuk for his remarks, and then we will go to John Fernandes for his presentation.
Hello, and welcome to our annual review of the state of energy storage. As you will hear from John, great things happened during last year. Above all, the government finally realized that our grand plans for decarbonization and renewable energy simply can't materialize without energy storage. Hence, the infrastructure law and the Inflation Reduction Act, subject of a previous STAB webinar. And indeed, there is a lot of new money available. Whether it will be wisely spent is a different matter. There are, however, also shadows on the horizon. The safety issue has not gone away. Our largest facility, the 300 megawatt Moss Landing site, has spent much of his life offline due to overheating. And some 200 lithium fires were caused in New York by little scooters. But what worries me more is the supply chain issue. Zimbabwe has just announced it will no longer export lithium. If they want batteries, let them make batteries here. If that idea catches on, the supply chain is in dire straits. But the issue is bigger. It's the competition between automotive applications and stationary applications. Automotive needs lithium. Nothing else has the same energy density. Stationary applications, on the other hand, need cheap electricity, cheap supply. With limited availability of lithium, prices will go up and automotive users will outbid stationary ones. So stationary will have to look for other storage mediums besides lithium. At present, these alternatives are marginal, but zinc, sodium, iron, and lead, among others, are waiting in the wings. Hopefully, with the new money available through the infrastructure law, it will help push these technologies towards maturity. Meanwhile, lithium batteries are leading energy storage into an increasing boom industry, as John Fernandes will now tell you. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Imre. And we need to switch over to John's deck and get him on the screen if we can.
Okay, looks like I'm up and running here. Paul, can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Yes,
Good.
we can hear you.
Excellent. So, Dr. Gyuk, as always, thank you for the excellent introductory remarks there. Really set me up perfectly once again. And thank you to all the organizers for today for once again including myself in Customized Energy Solutions. Anna, I think you said you need to advance the first slide and then you can give me, there we go. So very quickly, CES, we are a markets-centric consulting firm. Our market intelligence group covers every ISO stakeholder meeting that takes place every day across North America. That includes Canada, that includes Mexico. CES is also a scheduling coordinator. We operate out of a downtown Philadelphia 24-hour operations center. We're around 17 gigawatts of assets right now in our portfolio, and that includes about 700 megawatts of energy storage. We have shoplifted ISO staff from, I know, at least 6 of the 7 ISOs. So what CES really is in the markets, and that informs really all the other business lines and what we do. Anna, I don't appear to be advancing yet. Oh, there we go. I'm gonna try one more. So for me, the Emerging Technologies Group, we consult clients on market design, market entry, especially into US markets. The United States continues to be one of the most robust, specifically when it comes to stationary energy storage. We also have an in-house modeling, economic modeling and optimization platform. So we can take a project site and come back to a client and say, okay, at this location, you want this many megawatts, this many megawatt hours. Here's your complete financial pro forma. So again, really getting into the economics of energy storage. So getting into it, for 2022, as a carryover from 2021, I recall speaking quite a bit about hybrid storage, and I really should probably say co-located storage, storage plus something else. This is still very much a thing. This is a snapshot from MISO, the Mid-Continent Independent System Operator. I just grabbed it because, one, it's easily accessible, and it's really indicative of what we're seeing in most of the markets around the country. So when you look there at the graphic, the large yellow bar is solar in the interconnection queue. Above that is hybrids, and above that, the red is standalone storage. This is roughly what we see, a 50-50 split between hybrids and standalone storage. The vast majority of those hybrids continue to remain solar plus storage, and that is very much because of the now legacy investment tax credit for solar. If you charge your battery at least 75% from solar, you can start to apply the investment tax credit. Dr. Gyuk already made reference to the Inflation Reduction Act. As soon as this thing was signed, our phones started ringing off the hook. And that is mostly because, and I mean, really you see it across the bottom bars of the graphic there, we now have a standalone investment tax credit for standalone storage. And so without the need to pair and really integrate storage with solar, it would not surprise us. We are expecting to see a little bit of a shift in those development portfolios and what we see in those interconnection queues around the country, perhaps maybe tilting back towards more standalone storage than hybrid storage. And especially now that we have both an ITC and a PTC for solar, might not necessarily be as much of an economic need to pair solar with the storage. So you can see here, so levelized cost of energy, levelized cost of storage, that's the acronym you see at the top of the graphic here. There's a lot of math that goes into these things, but really just the cost of storage as compared to other resources. You can see the standalone ITC is going to have a significant impact, anywhere from 1/3 to close to 1/2 of a cost decrease for standalone storage. So we're really expecting this to change the economic business case for the platform in general. Resource adequacy, touched on this last year as well, specifically getting into ELCC, effective load carrying capability. So FERC Order 841 required the markets, the ISOs, RTOs, to qualify storage for capacity with a capital C, resource adequacy, depending on what market you're in. And so that really started the industry looking at storage as a reliability asset, not just something short duration to provide ancillary services, frequency regulation. With 841 compliance, I mean, really, you're probably looking at a midpoint of 4 hours of storage qualifying for capacity. So that's still, comparatively speaking, a relatively short duration resource. But when you start, and again, going with MISO here, and this time it's because of the dramatic swing we saw in the capacity clearing prices going from the 2021 auction to the 2022 auction. MISO historically was clearing the capacity markets at single-digit dollars per megawatt day. And then for MISO North last year, it was over $200. This dynamic, the clearing prices that you see here were specific to this auction in MISO. But this dynamic of reliability shortfalls, resource adequacy concerns, especially driven by the advanced retirement of legacy fossil fuel units in the fleets, whether it's a fleet of a vertically integrated utility or across an entire market footprint, it really is creating reliability concerns. Another thing we're seeing is seasonal planning for resource adequacy in the ISOs, and some markets are going even more granular than that. But this conversation is starting to bring up, you hear the term now, well, what about long duration storage? What about seasonal storage? Now, the tricky part about long duration is that's ill-defined. For some folks, long duration is 4 to 8 hours. That can cover a big part of the daily peak. When you look at the capacity accreditation value using ELCC, effective load carrying capability, a lot of the ISOs are giving storage 100% accreditation at 8 hours. But when your planning engineers and your folks responsible for reliability are looking at seasonal shortfalls in resources due to high load across the entire summer, or seasonal shortfalls for weather events across the entire winter, 8 hours is certainly not long duration. The trick with seasonality is that there's no construct to really value or monetize when it comes to something that long. Like I said, order 841, you can find value for 4-hour storage. You can find resource adequacy value in the California market for less than 4 hours of storage. There's nothing out there to give a price adder for days and days or months and months of battery capability. And you cannot simply rely on market dynamics to make the economics of a project work out. I think the biggest challenge when it comes to these longer duration technologies is the round trip efficiency or lack thereof. If you look at the highest performing, say, lithium batteries, you could have a round trip efficiency as high as 95%. So what does that mean? That means when I charge my battery, when I buy 100 megawatts or 100 megawatt hours of power, I have 95 megawatts to sell back. With a lot of these longer duration platforms, that round trip efficiency number, some of them are as low as 45% we've seen. And there's just the price separation over long periods of time is simply not high enough to where you're going to recover those costs buying 100 megawatts at one price and selling 45 megawatts at another price. So the technology still has a ways to go, but it's really market valuation and regulatory structures that probably have to be altered a bit to come up with value for 3 months worth of energy storage. So to be determined there. The other major dynamic to cite in the organized markets is interconnection queues. And so again, this is MISO. I know where to find this stuff, and MISO puts together really good pictures. So DPP, definitive planning phase, it's just how folks define their planning window when it comes to resources in the interconnection queue in a certain study cluster, if you will. That is a dramatic increase in a 3-year period from 2018 through 2021 in the number of gigawatts that have been submitted for study in the interconnection queue. And again, this is indicative of many of the other markets. California, the Southwest Power Pool, I'm pretty sure MISO, I believe PJM, a lot of these markets actually had to make formal filings at FERC to state that we are no longer hitting our interconnection study timelines. There's going to be significant delays, and there have been some pretty substantial overhauls to the study processes. SPP really made some changes to their interconnection study processes. They had project clusters going all the way back to 2017 that were still active. So a lot of resources in the queue are actually driving, I'll say it, driving folks to look elsewhere other than transmission interconnected resources in the ISO. So there's really 2 areas to contemplate. One is distribution connected storage. The other, I'll say the other driver for that is FERC Order 2222, which is the aggregation order. That is providing some consistency and more transparency, secure timelines, costs, everything for aggregated, smaller distributed resources to participate in the markets. 2 of the major discussion points for Order 2222 compliance were metering and then interconnection. For interconnection, the ISOs and RTOs really are going to be deferring to the distribution companies. And so effectively what you might be looking at is if you are interconnecting on the distribution system, you might not have to be sitting in these wholesale interconnection queues that are taking months upon years upon lots of delays for COD to project developers. So distributed storage becoming more of a thing as we transition here into 2023. And we are starting to model a lot of projects. And so this requires a lot of production cost modeling outside of, let's call it the 7 ISOs RTOs. So we're looking a lot in the WEC, the Western Interconnect. I have read more vertically integrated balancing authority, integrated resource plans over the last year than I think I have in my previous 4 years at CES combined. Storage is part of these portfolios. A lot of the states, and I might go so far as to say most of the states in the Western Interconnect now require utilities to make energy storage part of their modeling and part of their scenario planning. There are plenty of states, and really, I mean, you have to look to the Northeast, New England, New York, aggressive storage procurement targets, carbon policies, renewable portfolio standards that all include storage. So this is really making the developers take a hard look at non-market, more bilateral contract type arrangements for energy storage. And again, a lot of the hope there is that you won't have quite the delays in the interconnection study process. Reflecting back on those IRPs, you see a lot of these utilities citing long duration storage. Again, they're faced with substantial numbers of megawatts, if not gigawatts, when you look regionally, of fossil retirements. And so they're trying to fill that gap. And so there's a lot of mention of hydrogen as an emerging technology, and then long duration platforms. Okay, Dr. Gyuk already said it. The number one issue that we had clients coming to us about last year was supply chain issues, which of course impact project timelines and impact project costs. Last year, for the first time in, I mean, I think it was easily a decade, we saw an uptick in the price for lithium batteries, for energy storage. As I was talking, we have a battery group in our international office in Pune, India. I mean, this is what they do, is just international benchmarking, supply chain, manufacturing. I would say across much of last year, they were citing 10 to 20% increases in the battery cell components for energy storage projects. We have several, you call them partners, clients even, really the entities that are wrapping these systems. So your EPC type firms, integrator type firms. There were times last year they were citing 40% increases in the cost of energy storage projects. And again, these are guys that are wrapping the whole thing, the folks putting the metal boxes around the battery cells. A lot of the pricing now for energy storage is index pricing, so it's just reflecting the real-time prices in the market. Very, very difficult to get good predictability in what these prices are going to do, and that makes it challenging for financing. It makes it challenging to develop a good business case, right? Part of the economic modeling we CES do is price forecasting, and it's been challenging to lock this down. Discussing this with my colleagues in India, when is this going to normalize? They're expecting things to normalize really very soon in the 2023 this year, definitely heading into 2024. What we're not quite sure about is what is normal. Is normal going to be sort of where you see that 2022 trend right now, and will we see cost decreases from there? Or are we going to get back down to that 2020, 2021 trajectory and keep seeing price decreases there? We tend to be a little bit conservative, so we're not being too aggressive in terms of what normalization looks like. But we do think that things are going to settle down a bit, of course, with the announcement that Dr. Gyuk just shared with us at the beginning during his opening statements. It's little pieces of information like that keep the uncertainty in these sort of trajectories and projections. This is, Dr. Gyuk alluded to this, or just flat out stated this as well. It's really the electric vehicle market. Stationary storage is very big, well established here in the US. There's a good market for it in the UK. Storage is well established in Australia. But when you look globally, when people talk about batteries, the industry is talking about car batteries, and you can see the slope of this demand curve, especially when you look outside the United States. This is only going to keep going up and up and up, which is going to keep putting pressure on supply chain and prices. The metal component of what we're looking at in terms of batteries, and really just not just metals, minerals in general, makes a big difference. And if you look at the graph on the right there, you see nickel absolutely exploding over other metals. Nickel makes a very energy dense battery, and that is very important when it comes to cars. Building an energy storage plant in a cornfield in PJM, you're not really space constrained. You're at that point, you're going for the lowest cost solution to whatever application you're chasing with that system. For vehicle batteries, it's all about energy density, getting that battery into a small space. That is nickel. Now, especially with electric vehicle charging infrastructure, the build out of that, we now have charging corridors here in the United States. So range anxiety, I would say it's still a top 2 issue when it comes to just commercial buyers of electric vehicles. But price, when you talk to the automotive industry, it's really become a function of price. If electric vehicles want to get their price down, they're going to start to move away from nickel-based lithium batteries and go to phosphate-based lithium batteries. Globally, though, you're probably still looking at nickel being the sort of the flavor of choice, if you will. And so that's where these graphics are coming from. The United States, and really, this is not unique to the United States, and Zimbabwe's announcement is a perfect reflection of this. Everyone is trying to bring this in-house. That is a function of all of these supply chain issues, right? If you bring your supply chain onshore, you don't have to worry about the shipping channels. You don't have to worry about the mining in a country across the world. You can do a lot of that processing here. Everybody wants to do this. The other big thing about manufacturing is it's political gold in terms of jobs. Those are permanent jobs, good paying jobs, jobs where you don't need to spend 10 years on a very expensive education to do. Manufacturing is a very big deal when it comes to jobs. And so the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, I think is the IIJA. Paul, I get the gold star for the day if I remembered that acronym. That is what they're going after, and this is really trying to onshore a lot of this manufacturing. US-based manufacturing is more costly when it comes to doing a lot of this overseas, and so that's something else that is going to impact the overall economics, especially of storage plants. And there's still that question of where are we getting this stuff? These minerals are mined in really right now a very small handful of countries. They control the supply chain because they control the source at the end of the day. And then there's the entire other issue, and I'm not going to drag this audience down this rabbit hole, but the sustainability of these resources, right? When you start to look at the total footprint of a technology like a lithium battery, that carbon footprint, that environmental impact is pretty substantial. And so that's also one of the drivers behind let's find some other technologies, some longer duration technologies, some cleaner technologies using more inert materials. So a lot going on in terms of the drive for governments to bring some of this in, and it's all at the end of the day going to come back and impact the price of systems. So that is it for me. Got through that pretty quickly. So that is my contact information for folks with any follow-up. Otherwise, Todd, I'll turn it back to you, and we can go ahead on with the Q&A.
Great, thank you. So I want to just invite Dr. Gyuk to return to the screen. If you can turn your camera on. And John, thank you. I see you have your camera on. Thanks very much. Excellent presentations. We have a lot of questions, and we do have some time. So let's see how many we can address here. One thing that a couple different people have asked about is alternative battery chemistries. So one person says, if lithium is the critical element, which may be at risk geopolitically, what about other chemistries? And you spoke about some of the other metals such as nickel. Clearly, there's a story there for each of the different elements of these battery chemistries, but taken overall, what's the outlook for anything other than lithium, let's say?
Sure, I'm happy to start. So I mean, to the point that was made, yes, absolutely, this is an issue. There is a lot of research behind finding alternative chemistries for car batteries, for stationary storage, for all of it, and some of it is promising. At the end of the day, this stuff has to compete, and it has to compete, one, economically. The other issue, the other challenge, if you will, beyond just simple project economics is bankability beyond just financing, right? When a utility wants to sign a contract for reliability, when a regulator has to approve a project for safety and reliability, there's a lot of risk exposure to approving something that is using a non-proven technology that is being manufactured and provided by what you could consider a startup company, a smaller company. At the end of the day, when it comes to these platforms, folks want it. I mean, just think about reliability and safety. That is everything when it comes to energy delivery. Folks want to see well-established companies with big balance sheets and proven technology. Now, Dr. Gyuk mentioned the safety issues that continue to hamper lithium, and it's very true. But there's still, while the safety issues continue to just seem to be nagging at us, there are a lot of successful operating hours of lithium batteries out there. When you look at vehicles and storage plants, the stuff does work. There's been a lot of research. Okay, so what's been the cause of the fires? What are the issues? And as just that body of knowledge continues to build, it keeps confidence behind lithium batteries. So there's a lot to overcome. The cost curves are definitely going to be the biggest drivers to get folks to switch, and the need for something really long duration. But then we're just coming back to that round trip efficiency number. So Dr. Gyuk, I'll hand it off to you for anything else.
Yeah, and if we are talking about non-lithium batteries, it's still a supply chain issue. However, as you may have noticed, all of the materials I mentioned, iron, sodium, etc., zinc, are much more available materials by orders of magnitude when compared to lithium and some of the materials that go into lithium batteries. So the supply chain is likely to be much better, but nonetheless, it has to be watched for. And I have noticed that companies going into non-lithium batteries are already securing a supply chain for themselves. So vanadium companies, for example, own mines in Brazil or somewhere, or they have arrangements with South Africa. But the whole issue of supply chain insecurity, while it is avoidable at the front end for non-lithium batteries, because these are earth-abundant materials, nonetheless, people have gotten into a frame of mind that it's important to have your supply chain. And I'm hoping that we're going to have something at the other end as well, where we are talking about reuse and recycling of these materials as part of an eventual circular economy.
Well, good. That leads us into one of the next questions, which is, is there a recycling ecosystem for these batteries, and if not, is it developing, or what do we do when we get to end of life of these lithium-ion batteries?
I would say there's a lot of interest and a lot of research, and there are companies which are recycling lithium batteries. In fact, they are definitely growing, but the question is, to what degree are they relying on government subventions? You know, is a lithium recycling company really viable if it has to be completely independent? That to me is a question that is not resolved. But we are making progress on the mechanical and chemical part of dealing with lithium batteries.
Yeah, well said. I mean, it's unfair to say no, that it doesn't exist. Like Dr. Gyuk said, I mean, there are companies out there doing this. What you really don't have is one, the processes in place. I mean, installing a grid scale energy storage plant right now is no problem. I mean, it's turnkey, to use the term. Getting those materials out and to the limited number of entities that do have well-established recycling, repurposing processes in place is a completely different matter. This is also very much an economic thing. I mean, really what you're looking at is the breakdown of that battery, right? You're not recycling an energy storage plant. You're recycling, reusing, trying to find something to do with the cobalt, the lithium, the copper, every single one of those elements. And depending on that platform, you might have a project that is rich in materials that have a very viable secondary market, aftermarket. And so whomever comes and breaks that plant down and recycles it, they're doing it at an economic gain. If not, it's all at a cost. And it's not a cost that we CES have yet incorporated into our modeling, because again, it's so not standard. But it's going to have to become that. I mean, what you see it in a lot of utility solicitations now. They want to know what end of life for that project looks like. We're advising foreign governments who are trying to create markets for energy storage. I mean, every single one of those projects I've done, the question has been asked, what happens at end of life? And it's kind of, well, you sort of figure that out when you ask in 20 years when this project is done, and hopefully something more concrete will be in place. So it's really ill-defined right now.
Yeah, actually decommissioning can be an appreciable percentage of the cost of commissioning.
Well said.
Okay, we have talked about the supply chain a bit. Here's somebody asking, and this is a state energy agency representative actually, asking, should states modify their energy storage goals to reflect the supply chain concerns? I think what he's referring to is there are a number of states now that have established energy storage procurement targets. Energy storage is being included as part of other kinds of state policy goals, such as decarbonization goals and targets and renewables targets. So given the supply chain concerns, should something that state policymakers should be taking into account?
They should definitely keep it in mind. Whether I could advise any particular regulatory construct to take care of it, I don't know. But you know, you have these goals that are way up here, and we're the beginning. And hey, all of this material has to come from somewhere, and has to be delivered and built and disposed of. And so these supply chain issues definitely will become more and more important in the future. And that's both the supply in and the supply out.
Yeah, I would give the same response. I mean, I wouldn't, I certainly wouldn't look any state agency in the face and say, you need to ratchet that down a little bit. But manage expectations, especially manage expectations of cost, right? I mean, we showed the cost curves, so that really steep decline that this industry has enjoyed for over a decade, it might not be there at the moment. So just be ready for that when it comes to approving resource plans, whatever it might be. But I think shying away from aggressive targets would be pressing the panic button unnecessarily. I would say continue to let this play out, encourage new platforms, but just be ready with the risk that comes. Risk is too strong a word, but just be ready for new platforms. It's not going to be as proven, and the users of those platforms might have to tinker a little bit. So manage expectations, I think would be my recommendation.
And we should keep in mind that about half of the PUCs or state agencies do not have any regulatory structure about storage at all. They still haven't figured out that they will need storage. So there's a lot of work to be done.
Yeah. Well, this actually leads into another question about FERC Order 2222 compliance at the regional level. And as we know, FERC orders apply to independent system operators, ISOs, and RTOs, regional transmission system operators, and organizations. And these are regional organizations that basically manage the regional grids. And so the question is, have any RTOs or ISO compliance filings for Order 2222 received final approval from FERC? And do you have any high-level observations from your review of these filings? In other words, any other implementation concerns in addition to metering and interconnection?
I'm going to very carefully say I don't think there's an ISO of the 6 that are FERC jurisdictional. I don't know that any of them are saying that it's final. I know filings have been made. FERC has sent some comments back. There's some ISOs that are saying this is still preliminary. It really, to me, when you look at the conversations that have been taking place, I continue to say it's metering and interconnection. And for project developers, those have always been really the two biggest hurdles when it comes to specifically large portfolio of distributed assets. And especially when you're looking at large multi-state ISOs, PJM, MISO, Southwest Power Pool, those interconnection processes look different for each of the utilities. The costs look different for each of the utilities metering. And so just getting some consistency behind all that, it's going to be a lot of work. It's been an entire year of conversations, and these compliance plans still aren't done. But I'm hoping that it ends up being a very good thing for these distributed resources. If there's a concern is the word that I'll use. If there's a concern that I have, it's going to be metering costs. There is a certain robustness of telemetry and data, especially that wholesale markets require if you are going to monetize services or even just get paid for energy in those markets. Those meters are expensive. And you could, if you're looking at a single one of these revenue grade telemetry meters at a very small project site, the metering alone, it could sink the entire project. It ends up being a substantial part of that project cost.
I mean,
and so what you're looking at is compromises. Sorry, Dr. Chuck?
Too cheap to be metered.
Too cheap to be metered, right? Too cheap to be metered. So what you're looking at is solutions. Okay, instead of metering every one of those individual endpoints, do a single meter for the aggregate, right? Or maybe you don't need quite the precision, the robustness of the telemetry going back to the ISO. Can you be happy with whatever the utility needs? So that is still going to be something economically that needs to be worked out when it comes to actually getting metal in the ground as a result of Order 2222.
Okay, and just to sort of bring everybody onto the same page, Order 2222 basically says distributed resources get to play in wholesale markets, and so for storage, can you just give a sort of a brief summary of what that means, because it's pretty big, right, in terms of its impact?
Oh, it is. And I mean, it's the value of storage for a retail endpoint, especially when you're looking at commercial industrial customers, manufacturing centers, entities that need that just utmost of power quality at all times, right? Any interruption of service can shut down a manufacturing line, and sometimes you end up throwing away a day's worth of materials. So energy storage, very big for those clients. For large loads that have a peaky load shape, so not a 24-hour operation, but something that is running day night, as a lot of retail endpoints do, using energy storage to mitigate demand charges, which really are the bulk of retail charges for a lot of these customers. Storage is very well established for that. But then distribution connected storage, we know of utilities that are paying. So a retail endpoint will go to the utility and say, I'm installing energy storage behind my meter, or solar plus storage, whatever it may be. We know utilities that are basically paying customers, giving customers the same retail benefit they would have realized for that behind the meter installation. And the utility is just bringing that installation up onto the distribution system, because you're getting maybe a little bit more of an upstream benefit. You're still getting the downstream benefit. And what the utility really wants is control. If you have a piece of equipment behind that retail meter that retail customer has paid for, chances are they want first crack at that asset, and the distribution company might not have the level of control that they want. So, being able to move around and take full advantage of energy storage for all of these reasons, Order 2222 should again help enable that, and really enable supplemental monetary benefits from participating in the wholesale market that might have otherwise not been there with these assets that were either too small or too far down on distribution systems to be able to participate otherwise.
Yeah, and I think one of the things one should keep in mind, that in order to keep the lights on locally, in other words, the resistivity towards disasters and so on, distributed works better than centralized, because you want to make sure that you have your backup where you need it, rather than relying on some central authority to try and put backup into the entire system, which includes, of course, making all the connections if you have a disaster and you have breakdowns.
Yep. Okay.
But in terms of wholesale markets, I just see consolidation of these distributed storage facilities into an overall sort of company that takes care of the billing and the budgets and so on, rather than doing every household individually.
Right. Well, we are seeing aggregators start to bid into some of these markets where you can, if you are a solar and storage installer, for example, you could go out and market a program, sign up 1,000 customers and aggregate them and bid them into utility program or into the wholesale market as a capacity resource or something of that sort. So we are seeing a lot of that increasingly. We talked a bit about this problem of competition between the electric vehicle market and the stationary storage market in terms of where are the resources going to go and what's the higher value and so forth. And we have a few people asking, well, wait a minute, why is this a competition? What about vehicle to grid? What about electric buses? What about electric cars? What about charging stations being used for demand response and so forth and so on? So what about that? Is there a real opportunity here to double dip and use vehicle storage in lieu of stationary storage to some degree?
Yeah, but remember, if you use your car to supply electricity, it's just like running it. So your battery or your motor, whatever generates it, is going to lose cycle life. It's not free. Yes, it is there, and the capital cost is, so to speak, already paid for. But the operating cost is going to be just like putting your car on the highway. So if you can get reimbursed to a degree that is equivalent to losing 2 years of lifetime on your car, then that's fine. But it isn't going to work all the time. Probably it will work best with bus fleets, postal fleets, military fleets, and so on that are idle for much of the time. There the cycle life doesn't have to be all that long.
Yeah, utterly perfect answer. The utilization profile of a grid resource looks vastly different than what it looks like for a car, just in terms of the throughput, in terms of the amount of heat that can be generated, all of it. And reflecting back on what I was saying, the components of a car battery are different than the components of a grid scale battery, and they will react to and degrade differently depending on the use. And it's not just a simple function of, oh, well, during a peak time of day, we're just going to take all the power out of the cars. And so it'll just be just one nice, smooth use injection from the cars, and then we'll just charge them back up. Grid utilization is usually not that cut and dry, especially when it comes to batteries. So conceptually, it is great, and we will eventually get there. But when it comes to what the utilization profile looks like, there's a lot of questions. How the technologies will respond depends on that utilization profile. And really, all the extra components in the car alone that are needed to talk to a grid dispatch, maybe you can do it through a charging station, but there's a lot more integration and communications and back to metering, as a friend of mine at Nextera puts it, it's meter palooza. There's a lot of work to be done on vehicle to grid. And so it really is two separate markets right now that we're looking at: vehicle batteries, grid applications.
Yeah, I got to ask about this meter, and we're running out of time, so I'll try to be quick about this. But I happened to be in the room when there was a hearing, a state docket on customer battery program that was being argued back and forth, and the utility representatives were saying, well, we need utility grade, revenue grade metering, and sometimes you need more than one. You might need 2 or 3 meters per facility for behind the meter storage with behind the meter solar, and we've got to track what goes where. And the storage industry people in the back of the room were kind of like jumping up and down saying, well, you don't have to do all that. In California, we just take the reading right off of the inverter and that's it. No big deal. So there's an awful lot of talk about metering. To what degree is it really necessary to pay for all this extra metering? Don't we have the software and the computing ability built right into those inverters to keep track? Is it a trust issue, or is it a gaming of the system issue, or is it really that we can't meter things without revenue grade meters all over the place?
It's a dollars issue, right? It could be an auditing issue. And this is one of the arguments when it comes to 2222, and you're looking at kilowatt scale resources being paid by an organized market that manages gigawatt hours of energy per day. It's a drop in the bucket. Do you really need it to be that precise? But when it comes to the financing and the compensation and the market power and everything else that goes behind grid scale resources, it's not hard to make the justification that, yeah, you need that information to be precise. The other component of it is planning. Really, for a grid operator, for a load serving entity, I mean, technically now we do have a way to store electrons, but before that was the case, you really had to have everything in balance in terms of voltage, power quality, all of it. And so having a guesstimate on the amount of electrons you have available at any given moment from all of these distributed resources that are now supposed to be being used for grid scale operations, guesstimate is risky. And as soon as folks start to experience power quality issues, shortfalls of reliability. I mean, I'm going to the extreme here, but eventually all this leads to brownouts, right? Then folks are going to come back and saying, why do you have those garbage meters back there? You should have something more precise, giving you better telemetry. So yeah, you can go cheaper, but there's a reason why there's a robustness of information that's out there. Whether it's needed down on the distribution level is not a recommendation that I'm going to make while being recorded. So.
Okay. Any last words, Dr. Gyuk? We're at the end of our hour.
No, I think for those of us who have been in this business for, well, since the beginning, it never ceases to amaze me how fantastically well storage is doing. I dreamt of it, but I would certainly not have predicted it.
Okay. Well, hopefully 2023 will see some improvements and innovations, and we will have another good year for the energy storage industry and make some progress. Anna, I think we might have a few upcoming webinars to mention. Thank you very much to John Fernandes and Imre Gyuk for their comments, and thanks for everybody who's attended. Anna, I'll pass it over to you.
Perfect. Yes, we have 3 upcoming webinars that you can see on the screen now. The first one coming up on January 23rd is bringing community perspectives to community solar. Then we have an offshore wind webinar later that week. And then at the end of the month, we have assessing the value of energy storage, a framework for states, which we are co-hosting with Applied Economics Clinic about their recently released report, which you can also find on our website. If you're interested in attending any of these webinars, you can go to cisa.org/webinars to sign up. We hope that we can see you then. Thank you again, Todd, our moderator, John Fernandes, and Dr. Imre Gyuk for sharing all this information and also for this very lively and interesting Q&A session. I really enjoyed it. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.